Good. Okay, I'd like to go ahead and call to order the Town of Fraser's regular meeting for Wednesday, January 3rd, 2024 at 6 p.m. And can I please have a roll call?
Katie Fisher,
Louis Gregory.
Eileen Waldo,
Ryan Cirkvenik.
Cornell Quinn.
Katie Souls.
And Philip Vandernail. Appreciate everybody showing up tonight. If you haven't done so yet, there's a sign-in sheet over here. Please do so. Sign in. If you're online, these same rules are going to apply to you. If you would like to address the board during open forum or anytime during any of the discussion items, raise your hand. I'll choose you out of the audience, come up to the podium. Name, if you live in the town of Fraser or not. And you get 3 minutes. 3 minutes only, and you can't like bank your time. You can't give it to somebody else. So you can't sit down and then go, I've got 1:30 left and come back. And that's the same for online. So you'd raise your hands digitally, and that's how it worked. So we're now at the consent agenda item. There was a typo on resolution 2024-0103, approving the purchase of a sculpture by the acclaimed artist Billy Joe Miller. And the typo is that the funds are going to come out of 2024 and 2025 rather than 2023 and 2024. So that's, if anybody would like that removed from the consent agenda. Otherwise, we need to have an approval of the agenda.
Yeah.
But I would like to make
The correction.
I like to make a correction and suggest moving
Don't second it.
discussion and possible action item number H from where it's at to in front of the open forum. And then if we could have
So
somebody,
it looks like it has been changed. Isn't it?
Where's H?
So what's your resignation? You don't get resigned till the end of the meeting. You have to stay for the whole meeting. Yeah, and vote on stuff.
okay. Anyhow, if we can have an approval of the agenda, that would be great.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then an approval of the consent agenda. And if you want to pull off that item, you want to pull it
I
up?
would like to. I just get further clarification. It seems like a lot of money we're spending for sculpture without
Okay.
any discussion on
Okay,
like where it's going to go and why are we doing it and do we have the money and whatever.
okay. So you want to make a motion then?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item C.
Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, so we'll move that to the very top of discussion and possible.
Yeah. Make it B.5.
What?
Make it B.5. Steve can do his update and then he can update us on that. Fraser Valley Arts.
Oh, you want to put it there? I'm
Yeah.
fine with that.
Let's just tie it in with Steve.
He loves to talk.
And he knows everything. Good at it. He'll be able to answer our questions.
Okay, so we are now, so that the sculpture item is going to be
Oh,
5B
B.5.
B.5. So next is open forum. This is when the public gets to address the town board. This is where you get your chance to, for 3 minutes, and it's for things that are not on the agenda. And then go ahead and come up if anybody. Keith.
Good evening, Keith Reesberg, Winter Park Town Manager. Nick was going to be here this evening to express this, but he's been not able to attend tonight. Basically, here tonight on behalf of the Mayor of Winter Park and Town Council, Philip, we recognize this is your last meeting and simply wanted to express a thank you and appreciation to you for the leadership of your community and working with the Town of Winter Park. We wish you and your family the best in your future endeavors and look forward to working with whoever may succeed you. So that's all I wanted to
Thank-
say. So
thanks.
wish you the best.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And if you could give my thanks back to your board, I appreciate
I
it.
will pass that along.
Thanks.
Right. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Are there any other?
Hi, everybody. Megan Luther, 307 Eastham in Fraser. Michael already knows a little bit about this. I'm here on behalf of actually Park Avenue, 328 and 330 Park Avenue. We help manage those properties there, and I'm a minority owner. And our tenants just keep coming to us. You know, fortunately, we haven't had a huge issue with snow storage this year, but there's definitely an issue. We get a lot of snow pushed back into that alley and it gets blocked. We have what we call the back building, and the tenants have expressed concern over how they might evacuate if there was a fire or something was blocked. I know the fire department said that they could get back there, so that was okay. I just want to make sure that it was brought to your guys' attention because that alley does get blocked, and Hilly has built up quite a substantial hill. So like you can't actually get out to the highway from that alley anymore. And then it's blocked by Sun River's fence on the other side. So they're just kind of stuck back there. And I don't know if there's something we can do to make sure that that alley remains clear and open as additional emergency access, but just wanted to bring that up to your guys' attention.
Great. Sounds like maybe a future agenda item.
Or a staff
Look at you
issue.
volunteering. I can see. Yeah. Future. Thank you, Megan. Anybody else here in the audience? Anybody online?
Anybody online would like to speak, please raise your hand.
Okay, we are now at discussion and possible action, economical benefits of historic preservations, and Shanna Gann is here to.
Hi, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Shanna Gann. I'm the Executive Director of Grant County Historical Association. We operate 4 museums in the county, one being Cousins Ranch, Pioneer Village in Hot Sulphur, Emily Warner Field Aviation Museum in Granby, Heritage Park in Kremling, and then we recently Legacy Park Historical Group, which protects the town site of Sealac. Just came under our umbrella. So we're growing. But part of our mission is assisting with preserving Grant County's history.
Which town
Yeah.
site was that, Shanna?
Sealac? It's over.
Oh, Sealac.
Yeah.
Sealac Ranches.
Year. But what I wanted to talk to you about today is about the economical benefits of historic preservation. I want to start with the benefits, and then I'll bring up the barriers and my ask to you. Go to the next one. So there is something called the Historic Preservation Tax Credit. We applied for it with the roof that we just put on Cousins Ranch. Some of the staff was able to come to a meeting with ODIT, the Office of Economic Development. When was that? That was summer? Can't remember. But so what it does is it encourages the rehabilitation of historic commercial structures to support economic revitalization. And how it works is that you can apply for a tax credit for the portion of the cost of the project. It is an economic development program, which is interesting. The property does have to produce income. And the program is assessed on its impact on job creation, quality wages, investment, and tax revenue. So the program's allocated $10 million every year. $5 million is available for small projects, which are less than $2 million. And $5 million is available for larger projects. And to be eligible for these projects, you have to be an owner or a tenant of 5 years in rural area. Some of the requirements are different for rural areas because they're trying to encourage taking advantage of this program. It has to produce income. And so for your historic preservation, it just has to be 50 years old, which is not really that old. You need to think about how many structures we have in this community that are 50 years old. It has to be certified a historic structure on the local, state, or federal level. It has to meet the standards for rehabilitation of the U.S. Secretary of Interior. One of the timeliness is you have to put your application in 120 days within the project being completed. So what it looks like in rural areas, you're eligible for 35% of the qualifying cost. For example, my roof at Cousins, originally when I did this thing was going to cost 80 and applied for my tax credits was going to cost 86,000. It ended up costing 96,000, but that's what happens. But I applied for just over 30,000 in tax credits. And as a nonprofit organization, since we don't pay taxes, we will end up selling our tax credits for 80 to 99 cents on the dollar. So it will benefit the organization. But for a business owner in restoring a property, $30,000 in tax credits can go a long way. So the thing about Grand County is that gaining historic preservation or designation is a barrier in our community. The only option at this time is to pursue designation through the State Historic Fund. What happens is you go online, it's like a grant application, it's lengthy. The state is not always as familiar with our history. And it's overwhelming to property owners. A great example of this is Grandma Miller's. They've reached out to me a few times. Property is definitely eligible for a designation, but that process of going through the state is just a little overwhelming. And so another option that we have here in the county is to re-examine the Grand County Historic Preservation Board. And I would like to discuss what that looks like to reinstate that board. Go next. So it was disbanded in 2010. And the certified local government designation was relinquished. Thank goodness they relinquished it because they would have taken it away, but we can still get it back. One of the problems is it did not include an intergovernmental agreement with the towns, which of course is where most of our structures are. So the board didn't really have much to work with. So we're working to reinstate this board on a county level. It will allow us as a community or county to decide what is significant to our community. And it will open doors to programs like the Historic Preservation Tax Credit that encourage economic development and can help our property owners. So that's it. And this is where I'm going to answer questions on what this actually looks like. My ask to you today is just to say, yeah, we'd be kind of interested in that. Because I don't want to do the work and then come out with a this is what the mistake they made in the past. They didn't go to the towns and get the towns to sign on. I've spoken to Granby, I've spoken to Grand Lake, hoping to speak to Winter Park soon, still trying to get in touch with Criminal. So what I want is from the towns to say, oh yeah, we'd be interested in that. Or no, we think that's not a great idea.
So this board, are you opening questions now?
Yeah.
So the board, if we establish that, could they create that historic designation?
Yes. So that's
So
the
let's say,
sole
I want to
purpose.
use Dr. Susie's as an example,
Yes.
because the owner there is completely overwhelmed.
Yes.
And the mandates from the state couldn't deal with it.
Yes.
And it's crumbling.
Yes.
It needs attention
It needs a
and it's a
foundation.
jewel.
Yes.
Okay.
So what would happen is we would have a simpler, the Grand County Preservation Board never was, oh my gosh, the resolution was never rescinded. That's the thing I always forget. The resolution was never rescinded. So it just has to be reinstated. And then we can apply for our certified local government, which comes with other benefits to the towns and such, because there's other programs that go along with that. I have from the state the suggestion to the resolution, and this is where a group where I hope will have representation from all the towns will get to decide what they deem a historic property. In different communities, it looks like different things. You look at New Orleans, they tell you what color your house can be. They tell you what kind of flowers you can plant. They tell you what color your door has to be. So they're very strict. I don't see our community doing that. I see our community saying, well, we'll give you a historic designation, but if you add on to your building, please make it match. Please don't make it. And so it could be what determines a historical structure can be determined by the community. And so to answer your question, the process would look like it's a county level board. You filled out an application. Your buildings totally qualify. You fill out an application, it goes before the board says yes or no, which I think in our community, there will be lots of yeses. You do have to buy your own plaque, unfortunately. But at that point, you have a historical designation. And with that historical designation, you can go to the Office of Economic Development or to the State Historical Fund, and you can apply for funds that help you preserve your building. The one problem with Doc Susie's is he doesn't produce income.
Oh, Sean
It-
doesn't produce, it's got to
For
produce income.
Yeah, so for that economic development, the historic preservation tax credit, it has to produce income because it's an economic development plan. But with the State Historical Fund, you don't have to produce income. What happens when it talks about those standards of the interior is that when you receive tax dollars, there are requirements that go with it. So for instance, when I was looking at replacing the roof at Cousins, cedar shake roof was not the most economical decision. I asked them if I could put a metal roof on it. They said no, because originally it was a cedar shake roof. And because it's taxpayer dollars, and the state has to be accountable for what those dollars are used for. So it has to be historically accurate. So that's the only time when restrictions come in.
Okay.
And it's not like anybody's forcing anybody to get their building designated.
So
You
what
know,
does
you
your
at the
insurance
property-
company say about that?
Hmm?
What does your insurance company say about that?
They haven't said anything.
Okay, not yet.
Well, I mean, I had to do what I had to do.
Right, you have to do, yeah.
And
Okay, good.
It was here before, correct?
It was.
So it's the same.
Mhm. And so from you, all I'm asking, if you're interested in pursuing, if you think it's a good idea, if you think it would be a benefit for your community, and then I'll keep you updated with how it goes.
I think it's a great idea. So,
I think it's a great idea.
Thanks, guys.
Whatever it takes to
I
make
mean,
the
you're not asking for money. Didn't we?
Well, so I will say, I will throw this out there in my grant application. I did ask for money to go towards this because I did submit a grant application to the town of Fraser, as well as to support the operations at Cousins Ranch. We as an organization are still ending up in the red. I keep bringing in more money, but things keep costing more. So it is included in my grant application. I do estimate for the Historical Association for this work, it will probably be about $12,000. And I only did that because this is an endeavor that does not bring money into the Historical Association. That makes sense? So I did ask, I missed the town of Winter Park deadline, I mean, in my grant application, but I did request that of all the towns that I applied for grants, is to chip in to help put this together, because it is a little bit of work. So, but yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Congratulations, Philip.
Thank you, Sharon.
Enjoy your evening.
Right. Thank you. So we're now at Fraser Valley Arts update, and Steve Fitzgerald is here. And if you want to handle that one and then tag team with Sarah on the sculpture.
Sure. You want to do the sculpture 1 second?
Sure.
Cool. So I'll endeavor to be brief. This is my annual update on what's happening with what I like to think is partly your 501c3, Fraser Valley Arts. For those who are not familiar, Fraser Valley Arts is the not-for-profit that has been formed in 2021 to fund, build, and then operate the Fraser Center for the Arts. In pursuit of that objective, we do a number of things in the community, some of which I'll outline here. I wanted to give you a few highlights from our 2023 milestones, our 3rd year in operation. First of all, in cooperation with the town of Fraser, we were successful in securing a Department of Local Affairs grant that has some measure of funding that is aimed at the future center, which we're excited about, mostly infrastructure. 2, Plein Air at Altitude, our major fundraiser, was our most successful one yet. It sold out 150 people. We actually could have accommodated considerably more. And one of the things we're looking at for the future is a different venue. Sold more paintings, raised more money. And frankly, the conversations we had that week, including a fundraising event, led to 3 individuals joining our founders circle. So that alone is $75,000 committed to the center. That Founders Circle today has about $250,000 in it, 11 entities, 6 of which are couples in our community. I think it's both interesting and a little disappointing to note that all 6 of those individuals do not live in the town of Fraser. So on the one hand, there's widespread support from the community and the valley, which I think is great. On the other hand, it would be great to see some measure of our town proper step forward to join that. So that's a challenge I put out there to the community. The Mural Fest, Fire and Ice events that are done by the town have a component that supports Fraser Valley Arts, and that is the People's Choice Award. Again, in both of those events, we've set records this year, which I think is really encouraging because it's indicative of the groundswell of support for what the center is doing. This is individuals putting $1 or $5 into a kitty to vote on their favorite mural or to support the snow sculpture championships. And the fact that we set a record every year really, I think, is indicative of the grassroots support that we have. All told, in 3 years, we've gone from $5,000 in seed money that came from the first Mural Fest. We now have over $1 million in committed funds towards the center if one includes the DOLA grant and the value of the land that the town has promised. So huge improvement and kind of a milestone year for us in 2023. What are we going to do in 2024? Well, we do have some pretty important plans. Everything we've achieved to this point has been through purely volunteer work. I have a group of board members who are not only very dedicated, they're also getting tired. And so one of the things we are looking into is now that we have some funds, we are exploring the opportunity for a part-time events manager that will help us put on some of these events and raise more funds. Secondly, we are investing in professional grant writing help, a firm called Philanthropy Expert that we have engaged after an open bidding process. And that firm, I just met with them today, will be helping us apply for much greater and more like regional and national level foundation grants, stuff that we really haven't been competing for yet. So we're going to try and step up our game there and accelerate the fundraising. My hope is that in the next 2 years, we go from 1 million into the multi-millions dollars worth of funds. Thirdly, we really want to update the vision for the center. The one we currently have is a bit dated, still quite nice and definitely gets a lot of attention. The one thing that's missing, though, is a performing arts space. And so as we've talked about in the past, we think that's essential for the financial operation and longevity of the center. So we are in the process of creating a massing diagram, a very simple one that would depict that as part of the space that we would use in addition to that conversation. So that is a little bit about where we have been in 23 and where we're heading in 24. The one question I would have for the board, and it's not one you have to answer today, but I do think it's one that we would love your guidance on over the course of the coming months, is that there's, the intention has always been to put the center on the mural park. There is a second lot, as we all have talked about as we went through the ballot proposal, that's right on the river, that is arguably a little more scenic and inarguably a little larger. If we were to have our druthers as the 501c3, we would prefer that lot. That's not our choice to make. We serve at your pleasure in that regard. I think either achieve the goal of being an anchor for the business and economic activity that would follow. And so one of the things that we as a board would humbly submit that would be helpful for you all to come to a consensus on is where you prefer that center to be. And again, that doesn't have to be today. So let me pause there, see what other questions or thoughts you may have, and then we'll talk about sculptures.
Go ahead and move on.
Well, I have a question to talk to Michael about this. Is there any way we could think about purchasing a lot that's contiguous with that one we own along the river? I know the ballot initiative failed, but that seems like the ideal spot. I kind of agree. Is there any way we could enlarge that join a property too. I mean, I don't know what possibilities there are, but
We could have, but I think the owners of that next lot have already made plans to build a project on it
To which direction?
to the south.
To the south. What about to the west?
There's that possibility.
So.
So I don't
Food for
want to be what I'm going to be. So that's a future agenda item that
Yep.
shouldn't be decided in a
Okay.
update from Steve. So,
Okay.
but that should be brought back at some
yeah,
point.
can we put that on the agenda for a future meeting then? Because I think that's,
And that really just kind of looking for a desire for staff to move forward, looking for offers for those. Either expanding one way or the other, I guess some of the adjacent property owners with the interest that you're.
So that's on the future agenda.
That's what it's in the craft, so we can.
Yeah.
get a-
Yeah.
So you can have that wonderful discussion.
And I
at a future date.
identify that.
You're not gonna solve it now, Mike.
This is your last meeting.
Something that we
So
all
let's-
agree with.
So let's go ahead and move on to the sculpture.
Well, if this is your last meeting, you'll be here till midnight, okay?
I'm not gonna let it go until midnight. We're not out of here by 8.
Yeah.
There's a goal for you. So,
I do have a plan.
and if you'll just let me know when you have that discussion, I'll be happy to be here to answer any questions. But, we clearly get that that's a town choice. The sculpture, let me step into my other role, which is part of the town, which is the chair of the Public Arts Committee. And Sarah, feel free to join me because she and I lead this activity. I discovered that this was on the agenda a few hours ago, so I really haven't prepared anything. What I can offer, though, is some background. For the duration of at least the last 3 years, maybe even 4, the sculpture program has been part of the Art and Public Places budget. It has generally been between about $13,000 and $15,000. The sculptures you see around our community, whether it's the one in front of the historic church, the one near Sharky's, the others that are near the bank, the one in the Lions Pond area, all of them are a result of that program. Some of them are leased, some of them are purchased. The one in the Lions Ponds done by the Arboros was a purchased one a few years ago. I believe that was $10,000. And so what we do is we put a call for entries out for sculptors. We did that 2 years ago. And one of the 2 people who won, if you will, the commission for a permanent sculpture was Billy Joe Miller out of Albuquerque. Billy Joe, in the original plan we had a bunch of acrylic glass in it. And when we did some research into that, unfortunately, it's just too darn cold up here for that to endure. So Billy Joe went back to the drawing board. And one of the things we sort of encouraged him to do is think a little freely. And he came back with the proposal that you have in front of you. The funding mechanism for that would be entirely within the Art and Public Places budget. We would use that $15,000 from this year. And the reason why we have it spread over 2 years is so we could use next year's portion as well. We were not asking for any increase to that line item. And we're going to be pursuing that just in the way we have in the past. The only difference being it would be 2 $15,000 parcels for a singular sculpture rather than the diversity that we currently have. Sarah, what else would you add?
I think that's it.
I think if you could touch on the value of art in the community and how that would be great, because I think Lewis, that's part of, he wants to know why we're spending money on art.
well, yeah, not sure. I'd like to know also those funds come from your other activities like Mural Fest and the other events you put on. Do the revenues from that go to, building out, the art, whatever in the
The Art
community?
Center?
Well, art center, but sculptures or whatever we're spending our money on, or is that coming from the town's general
That's the line
fund?
item in the budget.
Yeah.
For art and public places, that the board identified 4 or 5 years ago, to create that line item to start dedicating funds. So the sculptures that you have in Fraser has been an effort over the last several years with funding that's kind of been going towards that. And they've been doing, putting out, requests for proposals from artists to utilize those funds. It's a nationwide reach, which is cool. And it's brought some, a lot of sculptures to Fraser, which has been great. And really builds on the value of art to the community.
Yeah, and to Philip's question, I'm biased. I'm an artist and I sit in your public arts committee. So fully qualified in that sense. But I've also traveled the world in my professional capacity. And one of the things that I think is true everywhere in the world that I've been, everywhere in this country that I've been, is that communities that value creative endeavors tend to be very desirable places to live. They have engagement with their citizenry on multiple levels. Not everybody's going to like every artwork, but somebody tends to like something. And three, tourists really appreciate that. Visitors to the community want to see these types of things. They give them visual interest. And one of the things we've tried really hard to do with the Public Arts Committee, whether it's Mural Festival, Fire and Ice, Snow Sculpture Championships, we're trying to build a reputation for our community that is focused on creativity. And the arts are not all of that, but they're a large chunk of it. And so this particular sculpture is really exciting to those of us from the Public Arts Committee because it fulfills all of those objectives, and its scale is likely to be the type of thing that Sarah can promote from a marketing point of view and draw visitors into our community as well, because it would be that type of destination art.
So where is it going to go?
So we're still doing Lions Pond? Yes.
Lions Pond?
Yeah, so the idea is as we reconfigure the Lions Pond area, it would be sort of the centerpiece. The artist has actually visited twice to look at sight lines up the divide so that those metal pillars, the opening in the middle, one would be able to stand in there. And not only would the divide be framed through the view, he's deliberately making them reflective. So depending on the season, the colors around it would be reflected in the sculpture itself.
Okay. I mean, I'm not against spending money on the arts. It's just I want to make sure we're getting our money's worth. You know, when I look at that sculpture that's kind of out in the middle of, well, near the Lions Pond, the is it Eisenhower, the fisherman? I mean, that's out in the middle of nowhere. And I stumbled upon it one day, but I don't think anybody, you know, it's not getting any, you know, visibility, and I don't think it's doing anything for the town. So if we're going to spend money on something, I would like it, you know, to, let's say, have a return on investment, but be worth the money we're putting into it.
Make an impact.
What? Yeah, make an impact, right?
Well, and as we build out that park area, that will make more of an impact.
Yeah,
I mean, we just
Bingo.
got
and it is a fishing pond.
2.5 million.
Right, but
bats.
that sculpture is kind of hidden, you know,
Just over one.
anyway.
But the thought was to have the Lions Club ponds done, you know, and have the sculptures along that. But who maintains the sculptures?
The town. Yeah.
I'm confused. In the video, it seems like there's two sculptures.
It's the first one.
That's why. Initially, he actually gave us 3 renderings, so those were 2, 3.
Okay,
The first one.
the first one.
Okay.
Okay, everybody okay with it now? Okay, so I need a motion. Thanks, Steve.
You're welcome. Thank you. And Philip, the best to you and Eric and your whole family. Congratulations.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Hey, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2024-0103,
Thanks, Mayor.
approving the purchase of a sculpture by acclaimed artist Billy Joel Miller.
For a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wow, aye. Katie,
Aye.
that was a very weak 7 ayes.
Well, I forgot that we moved it out of the consent agenda, so
Yeah.
that's why I had to go find it. I
Oh,
was like, why did I not see the number?
Okay. We are now at a rate study
Okay.
and this. am I-
Study.
Yes. And this is Paul.
Good evening. This is just to have a discussion regarding the rate study that came on October 18th. I'm going to try and share my screen if I can. where it went.
Aren't you the engineer one?
Yeah, I had it earlier. That's messed me up.
I swear I didn't touch his computer. That's what we're doing.
Not pulling up on mine either. That's weird.
So we have Todd and London from Raptelis online for any questions that may come up. But this is up for discussion since last time was a work study and we kind of ran out of time and we moved into the regular agenda. We didn't have any questions or talk about it at all. So I wanted to bring this back before the board before we go any further so we can have discussion on it. This right here is a summary of the annual rate increases for each of the 3 scenarios that were presented.
Was that up on that presentation?
This was information I was just given, so
Okay. Thanks.
so scenario 1 was the all cash financed, where it's only financed by rate increases. So you can see what those look like percentage wise over the 10 years of the CIP. So all cash is 60% 2 years in a row and then 7. Scenario 2 is the town pursuing 25% grant funding and then funding the rest with cash. So rate increases of 42, 42, 10, 10, and then 6. And then the last option is the town again pursuing 25% grant funding, cash, and then also taking out 2 loans over that 10-year period to fund that. So that keeps the rate increases lower, but it would also require the town to take out 2 bonds.
Okay, so is that just for water? I was confused.
This is just water.
Okay, so that's just
sewer.
water.
There is a slide in there where sewer is going to go up slightly,
Okay,
and that funds the sewer rehabs that need to happen, similar to what we did with the sewer bore. A lot of sewer rehab that needs to take
Okay.
place in Old Town.
Yeah.
That's one of the later slides.
so I'm sure maybe you'll have it coming up. Will we have something where we can just look at the dollar amount and see what the increases will be annually and how that's going to affect people
Yes.
on their, okay, great.
So this is the current rate structure. The base rate's 153 per quarter, plus your tiered rates per thousands. And then the commercial is 153 and just has that one base rate. This slide shows what those rates would be with the 3 scenarios. This slide was presented last time. Scenario 1 would take the quarterly base rate to 245, and then it would up the tiers slightly. Scenario 2 would take it to 217, and then scenario 3 is 176. But again, 2 requires us to get 25% grant funding, and scenario 3 requires that same 25% plus taking out two bonds over that 10-year period. And here's what those rates look like stretched out over the 10 years. They get kind of expensive at the end. At the end, though, we're kind of only trying to stick with inflation at those 6%, 5% increases. So for 2024, the change in the bill for scenario 1 is $164 per quarter. Scenario 2 is 102. And scenario 3 would be 26. And that's based on, typical 4,000 gallons per month.
That's a big jump.
Is that
in
chart
2 years.
is that chart in our,
Not in this one. I got those today
So,
to make it clear. So we're going to look at a rate increase for 2024. And then we would have to raise the rates
and then
again.
2025 is
Yeah.
really significant.
Yes, because it's the same percentage on top of what you had already done again.
So I know I've been trying to beat this into everybody's head, but you say typical single family. What are we considering a typical single family? Because we still haven't defined what a unit is.
It's
other than a
that,
kitchen and
so it's a
bathroom.
normal one SFE. And then your consumption charges. So if you go over 4,000,
So if a 1-bedroom unit went over 4,000, they get charged the same rate per 1,000 above that. But if they use 500 gallons, the other one uses 4,000, they get charged the same rate for the initial fee.
yeah. So the base rate is the same for everybody.
Yeah, so what we're doing is encouraging bigger houses and not smaller houses. We're encouraging more bedrooms per house than
it's the same, so this rate structure hasn't changed from what we've had
No, I know, I'm just,
in the past. So Raftellus was, they were tasked with looking at our current rate structure, what our rates needed to be to fund the 10-year CIP that we approved.
right,
And so these rates are what fund those 10-year CIPs, all those CIP projects that they'd been deferred for years. And so the costs have gone up. And this rate structure attempts to prevent any situations where we're forced to build something that we haven't already tried to plan for. So if the state were to come down and say your water treatment plants are no longer viable, we can then say, well, it's in our 10-year CIP to replace it within this many years and maybe not get forced into a, 2-year, have to take out a $20 million loan.
right, could we, and I know we talked about it before, and Clark sent an email to remind us, but back in 2012 through 2016, we were talking about rates and stuff and being on the water district. Anyway, we had talked about making it run with the square footage. So a person in a 600 square foot house isn't paying the same base rate as a guy in a 10,000 square foot house. And that's what we currently have. So we have all these second homeowners that have 5,000, 3,000, 4,000 square foot houses, and they pay the same amount that a guy in a 350 square foot unit pays. So they never go above their 4,000 because they're never here. But this guy never goes above his 4,000, but he's paying the same as a house that has 20 people in it, or 15 people in it, or 12 people in it, whatever we're legally allowed to have nowadays, in the house for that 2 weeks or 4 weeks or the 90 days they rent it out a year. So I'd like to see a rate that encourages a more mixed housing. So we get smaller houses built that have a better rate, and the bigger houses pay a higher rate. So if you want to have a 3,000, 4,000 square foot house, you're picking up more of the cost, because the bigger houses usually have more water lines and more sewer lines running to them. They're more separated from the smaller houses. So they have a lot more infrastructure that goes with it. So I think the bigger houses should be paying a higher fee than the smaller houses as a base rate.
And I agree with you on that too, because one of the things that would make a difference, again, one of my concerns over time, especially with the big jumps in the next few years, is Mary, who lives on Eisenhower. She's 92. Her house is maybe 800 square feet.
Right.
It's her. She hardly uses anything, and she's on a fixed income. I mean, she would not be able to afford something like that. But by doing that,
right,
and scaling it down in size, that would also afford some protection to these people that are lower income and in smaller homes. I could see that, I mean, we still are gonna need to increase our rates some for everybody, but
right.
that,
It wouldn't be as dramatic. The smaller houses wouldn't feel it nearly as much as the bigger houses.
right,
And if things run like they have, Steamboat, Aspen, Breckenridge, they have huge homes. I mean, some of their homes are 25,000 square feet. It's crazy. Right? And they pay the same tap fee as an apartment.
Paul, could you go over the staff briefing memo? What is the current water consumption rate? You have the proposed in here, but
153.
what is it currently?
153.
that's per.
No, I'm talking about per gallon, the water consumption
So
rate.
it's in the slides. It was in the previous one. It's $1.50 for tier 1.
Is that what it is now?
$3 for tier 2, $6 for tier 3. In the all cash, we're going to 240, 480, and 852.
So it's gonna, okay, that's not,
So
that's not in
consumption-
here.
Consumption is not where our water system is funded.
Right.
It's funded on the service charge because of the locale we're in.
Yeah.
Over 50% being second homes, they're empty all the time. But we have to treat that water and supply that water 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, whether there's somebody there or not.
Right.
So we have to fund the system. So the service charges help cover that. And
Right.
then the rates, they're going up. Worst case scenario, they go up 90 cents on tier 1.
But tier 2 and tier 3 are higher rates.
They're lower. Yeah. So yeah, they go to 480. So $1.80 and then 852. So I know a lot of has been said about what happened in Granby, But if you look at, I included it in the packet, Granby's North Water System is $300 service charge and $12 per thousand.
So is tier one, tier two, and tier three cutoffs, are they going to be the same?
Yeah, we wouldn't change the cutoffs, that would stay the same.
And what about for commercial mixed use?
The consumption rates are without a code change, they have a flat single tier.
It seems like we should have a tiered increase for them too, right? They use a lot of water. Shouldn't they pay their fair share? Kind of like your point about a small house versus a large house.
Right.
That wasn't the direction of the rate study. So if that's the direction the board would like to take, we can
I mean, shouldn't
re-engage
businesses
Raptellus
share?
to look at that again. The memo that was from 2012 and 2016, I wasn't made aware of that until 4 o'clock today.
No, right. No, and I forgot about it. I'm just saying it's something that.
Yeah, so
we
that,
talked about
you know,
back in the day.
apparently this was talked about back in 2016 with the previous town manager, and I don't know where it went.
Well, and we had the water, Ron and she ran the water committee. So
It was never completed.
Pardon me?
It was never completed.
Yeah, but never.
So
So,
if that's the direction the board would like us to take, that's why we're having a discussion here. There's no actionable item
Right.
here
Right.
because
I mean, it
we
seems
need
like
to
the business,
discuss.
they should share in the pain also. If we're gonna
so
ask residents to share, I mean, it's a significant increase.
It is.
There's also, is it the red zone?
We have a
Yeah,
red
that's
zone.
right.
Red zone where we have to pump the water
Mhm.
to them. And there's never been any payment for that pumping. Right?
No, there's no additional charge for that top level. It was looked at. Raptellus has another client that does charge different rates for different elevations, but that didn't they didn't deem that necessary here because we only had one different tier that it would be required for, and there's not a significant number of houses up there. So it wouldn't make that big of a difference in the red zone.
What about the dead end lines that we have to blow out every year? Is there a big cost to that, or is it just wasted water because it doesn't circulate correctly?
It's just kind of wasted water. One of the CIPs is to try and loop that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we do have, Winter Park Ranch is open to tying it, making those loops through them to try and get that system
Better.
tightened up, but,
Yeah.
it's really tight. On the southern end, there's not much room to work back there. On the northern end, we have more room. We have more open space back there, but it gets kind of tight on that southern end.
So should we ask Raptellus to take a look at also changing a structure to go by,
A tiered base rate based on square footage or?
well, and
or
not just the
bedrooms?
tier, but the fee, that base rate,
The base rate.
The
yeah.
tier, tiered base rate.
the base rate.
Yep.
Have different base rates for,
Different
you
size.
know,
Square footage.
for different size homes.
Todd is on the call with Raptellus. Todd, is that something that you can speak to? Have you seen, I don't know if state statutes prohibit that or not, but is that something you've seen in other maybe Western Slope communities where you do have a large percentage of second homeowners or?
We do see that from time to time. Usually if the utility has larger homes, it might have a larger meter. So the service charge or base charge might increase by meter size. I do know that the town, the way things are billed now is it's one single family units, one SFE, but the basis for tap fees is EQR, which is calculated a little bit differently. That would be a better representation of assessing a base fee, but that also requires probably a lot of billing system changes and some internal administrative efforts there. And that's how many utilities do that. So we could certainly look at that. There's ways to differentiate between large and smaller customers, but because you do track meter sizes for single family homes, and you do track the EQRs, which is used to design or set your tap fees. And we could look at that as well. It's just depending on the amount of administrative changes that you'd like to take on if we were to make some recommendations for that.
Todd, remind me, EQR,
Equivalent residential unit.
okay.
and SFE is single family equivalent. They're both the same thing, but they're measured a little bit differently in the town of Fraser, and other communities do have it exactly the same way. The tap fees are based off of an EQR, and the billing units are based off of an SFE. It's common, and it's just something that's a legacy that's been around for probably since the 70s during the Clean Water Act and Clean Water Drinking Act.
And I know one of our districts, and it's one of the Winter Park ones, but I can never remember which one, but it's the one that services Old Town. They do it by fixture. So the more showers, the more sinks, the more toilets you have, the higher your base rate is.
And that's what the EQR basis is for the tap fees.
Okay.
That's how they measure the EQR. So that's certainly a method. We worked in the town of Breckenridge. Aspen is very much the similar way. Crested Butte, Steamboat, all of them have some variation of what the town of Fraser has. And it really comes down to what's the quality of the data for those customers you have in the system, and does your system have the ability to make a change in way you assess the service charge. That's usually the biggest hurdle to get over, but we can look at that and see how that might impact customers. Some customers may go way up, some might go way down, and you factor in the overall revenue adjustment of 60% or whatever alternative you're looking at. It can get kind of confusing, but we've done that, and it has really reset the equity between the different customer classes like you're mentioning.
Yeah. I just thought it was something good to look at, just because, before, when Fraser was mostly condos and townhomes and a few residential houses and a lot of little residential houses, there wasn't a big difference in square footage, but now there's a huge dramatic difference in square footage.
Right.
And I like the idea, he mentioned not reinventing the whole billing system. So if it's just the quarterly fee that's judged by this, that's information we can gather right now and have forever. And then the usage can stay the same regardless of the size of the home.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is we want to go back and take a look at the 2016 type situation, look at square footage, and then also look at a tiered commercial rate on consumption.
Have we decided on the scenario?
No,
One, two, or
this
three?
is a discussion.
Okay. Well, and I guess the other thing I'd like to see is changing to a monthly billing cycle, because it's, I think the quarterly thing, it's a big bill when it comes quarterly. People don't necessarily budget for it that way. And it also helps people know, how much water they're using, and they can attenuate their usage based on that. It's when it comes quarterly, it could be a big surprise.
Okay, we can look at going to monthly. I think one thing that will help with the customers knowing what's going on is our switch over to the new meters that give them, once we have it up and running, they'll have real-time data on how much water they're using on a daily, hourly basis. So they'll know, and that you can set it up that you get alerts. So you can get an alert if it thinks there's a half a gallon a minute leak, you'll get a phone call or you get a text message and you go check all your toilets because one of them is probably leaking. But we can go back and I'll re-engage with Ratellis on looking at these in another way. And
so you're saying you could go onto that bill pay site and look at your usage real
so
time?
it's just through the meter. It's not, but you can see you can see your usage real time.
I'm not trusted with the billing at my house. So do we get it by email or do we get it by mail?
Currently, I believe I'm not sure how you
All electronic.
all electronic. So it's an email now.
So because I think before we did it quarterly to save on the mailing cost. So the town didn't have to mail out every month.
I can talk to staff
it's still-
regarding feasibility of monthly versus quarterly and what those impacts might be. There might be something we're not thinking about.
Then maybe we put a 25-cent fee if people want mail. If it's mail, whatever.
Plus the
whatever
town
the cost
gets-
of the stamp or
The town
paper
gets
is.
the money more real time. We're not like 3
Right.
months in arrears all the time.
Right.
Trying to see if there's anything else. So this was the change to the sewer rate. It was going to go from 137.50 to 148.50. There's not a big change there. It's just to help fund those replacements.
Do you guys also want to see that tiered structure for commercial buildings as
Yeah,
well?
that'd be a
They
good
want to
idea.
see.
Yeah.
So tiered base rate for commercial and residential.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you'd like me to?
The,
That's a good.
There's
start.
this one slide that capital expenditures projected to increase over the next 10 years. But it's only got 4 years. All the
Does
other
it have a number?
slides,
Do you have a number on that slide?
13.
So that's the operating expenses.
Capital expenditure.
Yeah, then it's going out, it's just the first couple years of our capital. Um,
All the other slides go.
yeah, I'm not sure what,
There,
Well,
Todd, can you?
10 years.
oh, I believe, there was one slide that showed compared a historical of a couple of years, followed by the next few years. There's another slide after that, I believe, that shows the full 10-year forecast. And I'm trying to,
Maybe it is 15. Slide 15.
there it is, there it is. Let it go down.
That one?
Okay, there's the historical one, and I believe there is
That one.
there's the forecast there.
There's the forecast. So 2031, I believe, is the water treatment plant,
Yeah, the surface water plant.
surface water plant. Which, depending on state regulations, could have to move up if something were to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Similar to what happened in Granby.
Right.
So we're
with that-
trying to
ahead.
anticipate that, but not
Yeah.
build it too soon.
And not that you need to know, if you don't know this, don't feel bad, because I don't. If we go to a surface water plant, we can still use the other plant as well, or is it?
Yeah, we could.
It's just
Okay.
separate.
I would. So it makes sense to build the plant big enough to handle everything, but to keep everything else for a backup.
Yeah.
Well, 'cause
Does that give us a lot more taps? Sorry.
go ahead.
No,
No,
the taps is based on our water
we're
rate.
still,
We're still with the taps we currently have. And then the ability to use our surface water right with a surface water treatment plant will get us a limited number of
and that's
taps,
all.
and that's all we've got. So it would have to be brought in from a water right from somewhere else.
So we're looking for water, right?
Or developer will need to bring one in. for
Yeah.
further
Yeah.
expansion.
So, and in the Gaskell ditch, we've got, that's the surface water we're looking at.
Right.
Do we have the senior water rights on that ditch? Or is there someone above us?
We have very senior rights there, but they're not sure who's above us, but
Okay,
there are. There's ours, and then there's one below us, like downstream,
Mhm.
and then I think Denver Water has everything else.
Yeah.
So there's currently 2 water rights that I know of from Gaskell down,
okay.
and then so it's us, another owner, and then I believe Denver Water gets everything else. The Eisenhower ponds have a dedicated 1 CFS. They don't use it; it just flows through to keep the ponds fresh. Any other questions?
What, when these comparisons are done with other municipalities,
Mhm.
aren't some of them funded by mill levies?
That I'm not sure. I was just pulling their rates.
And are we,
And then I
Because-
provided Raftellus with the new rates that were just approved in Granby to update that, because that's new from last time.
and can you do the tap fees themselves based on the size of the house, or is that something?
So we'd have to look at it. That's
Okay,
the
that's a-
trouble there last time was that the tap fees are
Regulated by.
they're
the-
regulated by the state, and we
Yeah,
have
right,
to
right.
we have to justify the rate increase to pay for what we're doing, and
Right.
so
That's okay. I'm just curious to see how that all
Yeah.
is.
2031. Show them that.
pardon me.
Show them that 2031 number.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
and
your
so you can see
justification.
here, the North Water System for Granby is really high. Scenario 1 for us, all cash. Doesn't reach that yet. Scenario 2 stays under 400. And then scenario 3 is at 345, but there is debt service there for however long.
Yeah.
It would take to get there.
And then they're all a lot higher than Grand County
Yeah,
number
I'm not-
1. So
yeah.
I'm wondering if they have a mill levy.
They're funding that somehow.
I'll look into that. I mean,
Okay.
Thank you.
Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks.
Well, that ought to bring some more people out to run for trustees.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Where's Herb? Is Herb?
Yeah, her is.
Don't come to the meeting?
Yeah. Okay.
or might come back.
So now we're at resolution 2024-0102. This is for to apply to the Colorado Heritage Land Trust regarding Victoria Village Natural Protection Area and Sarah Z. I don't have to use C because the other Sarah left. Sarah.
Hello, thank you all. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen.
While she's doing that, Jeff, do you know how the new rules are affecting Grand County for the water? There was something talked about that if the wetlands aren't a direct link into a stream, that they don't hold the same rights anymore or the same power.
There's a long history of legal battles that
Still going
continue
on.
to go back and forth,
Okay.
back and forth. The EPA and the Corps recently took a different approach, and they said, well, what's probably not going to change? And so I'd be happy to.
Is that what they were talking about?
let-
Okay.
And that's, well, there's always a legal battle.
We can discuss that later.
And Jeff, I think a couple of the board members might not know who
Oh,
you
sorry.
are. Would you mind introducing yourself?
So Jeff Elliott.
I was getting there,
Yeah,
by the
sorry,
way.
sorry.
Hey, Jeff, yeah,
No,
use
that's
the
fine.
mic so people can hear you online.
Just right through it.
I just want to say hi. Because I haven't seen it in a while.
I just didn't want Michael to think I had poor manners. This is Jeff Elliott with Grand Environmental. He's been working with us on a number of projects throughout the years. Since I've started, I've worked with him on Marianne's Trail and Victoria Village, and now consulting for the potential big park in the Lions Ponds area as well. So to jump right in, most of the materials in your packet were prepared by Jeff. There is a lot of information there. We're not going to get into all of it for the sake of time, but we're happy to dive in anywhere where there are questions or you would like us to dive into it. Some of it's a bit more technical. But what we have before us, and I'll say as well before I jump in, we also have Jeremy Crones from the Colorado Headwaters Land Trust, who's with us virtually as well. And then we have two members of the board from the Colorado Headwaters Land Trust with us as well. So a bit of background, and then I'll let Jeff speak. But as you all know, the Victoria Village property was purchased by the town back in 2022 for a workforce housing project. As part of that property, there is a 2.59 acre protected natural area that has a number of deed restrictions on it as part of the covenants with the protected natural area. So that was a area that was established in 2012 as part of, as I understand it, wetland mitigation that happened on the property with the previous owner. So the covenants include prohibitions on most excavation construction activities. There are some considerations for municipal utilities. We do have some water lines that run through there. But what we're basically looking to do now, we're working with Jeff to approach the Army Corps of Engineers to try to amend the permit that we have for that protected natural area, primarily to allow for a bridge that's needed to cross the St. Louis Creek as part of the proposed road for the project. So Jeff has a number of photos of the creek. This is our current bridge, which didn't seem like it was going to work too well once we have a few hundred people living over there.
And this is a car bridge.
Yes.
And it will be 2-lane, a
Yes.
narrow 2-lane.
With sidewalks on both sides.
Yeah, so you can see on this map, and we have some other maps I'll put up in a minute here when I let Jeff speak, but this kind of shows the outline of the protected natural area, the dotted yellow. And what we're proposing to the Corps, we wanted to amend it to be able to do the bridge. The Corps suggested in our pre-application consultation with them that we just change the boundaries of the P&A so that the bridge and the road would not run through the protected natural area. So that is the biggest ask that is part of this work with the Army Corps. But in addition to that, we are looking to develop a long-term utility management plan, stabilize and enhance the creek corridor to improve functional values, fish habitat. Or also we've approached them about the possibility of some foot trails in so that people could use it and, you know, enjoy the creek. And as part of that, we have approached the Colorado Headwaters Land Trust to ask them to take over management of this protected natural area. So the town of Fraser would continue to own the land, but they would own the conservation easement. They would manage it. They would handle reporting, things like that, to ensure that it actually was conserved as it's meant to be conserved. So working with the trust, we would amend the easement that would be presented to the Army Corps of Engineer, and if accepted, would allow us to then apply for the permits needed to construct the bridge for Victoria Village. Other options would be for the town of Fraser to continue to manage and do reporting on the easement, but as I understand it, we haven't really been doing that thus far, as the Army Corps permit requires. We also could seek out another entity to potentially serve this role in place of the Colorado Headwater Land Trust, but we have not identified another entity at this time that could serve that purpose. So we really do see working with the Colorado Headwater Land Trust, if they would have us, as our best option to move forward. This will be a somewhat lengthy process. We're hoping to be able to do it within a year. But again, building that bridge that's needed for the development is all kind of contingent on these steps happening. So we see them as being good stewards. It allows us to move forward with the bridge, but also to make sure that we are actually conserving this piece of land that's meant to be a protected natural area and that important creek habitat that runs through the property. So with that, I will hand it over to Jeff to jump in.
Use the mic, Jeff,
First.
because people are listening around the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we could get the first map.
Yeah.
And actually Sarah just covered it very, very well.
I've listened to his spiel a few times now.
So what you're seeing in this PowerPoint here started out as a pre-application consultation with the Corps of Engineers, something that we typically do, and just to get their sense of what they're thinking here. And it's also been shared with staff and Kent Whitmer. And so we have a good sense that we're on solid ground here. A little bit about this first map. This is something we put together, I guess around, must have been about April of this last year. And that's what you've got right now, okay? When Michael first shared some of the due diligence documents with me in just these initial conversations, and this jumped out as something that was certainly part of the project. The yellow dotted line is an area that the Corps of Engineers agreed if the owner's protected, then they could move ahead with certain activities on the site. And you'll notice that you still have something like 45 lots, I think, on the property. That comes from the county assessor right there. So there's a lot of cleanup to do on the property, in other words, here. You've also got some wells, some active, and then the one that's down low with the lines down through it. That's a potential well area. So that was one of the first things that Paul pushed, was let's make sure there's a place for another well for the future. So we tried to avoid the protected natural area, but the planners in the town are committed to connecting the two pieces of the property, and that of course makes sense there. So looking at the actual the deed restrictions, the prohibitions, they're very strict. It's a full kitchen sink, everything you could imagine. No digging, no building, no demolition, no nothing. So there has to be some kind of significant change in order to get a bridge across it. Because right now, the answer is no. You cannot put a bridge across the creek. It's not legal. Okay. And so go to the next one then, please.
I'm sorry, what is the light blue on this map?
That's the floodplain.
Yes.
The gray and light blue is a floodplain.
Yeah, so there's a 100-year floodplain, and then something they call the floodway, which is a higher probability flood area.
But we're allowed to build in the floodplain?
Well, the devil's in the details there.
Jeff,
Yes.
on the
Yes.
with the amount of water that's restricted and goes to Denver, is there a chance that would ever flood like that? I mean, wouldn't that take like that bridge by the condos
So-
collapsing to fill that up?
As I understand it, and this was before my time, the biggest flood remembered, I think, was back in the 70s. And it happened when there was a fuel truck that fell over in Boulder Creek. And the powers that be decided the best thing to do would be to shut off all the water going into Boulder Creek. And so everything flooded around here. So your low probability, high impact event could be any number of different things. And that hasn't changed in that sense. So you're waiting for somebody to drive along the collection canal and turn this one off and then turn this one off. Meanwhile, all sorts of water comes down. So yeah, you still have to be ready. And the engineers that work with FEMA have to assume all of that kind of thing. I do know what you mean though. By that.
Interesting.
And Louis,
Yes.
the darker blue there is floodway, and then the lighter blue is 100-year floodplain. So there's more restrictions on the actual floodway.
And then the grayish color is what?
Sorry, that grayish,
That's-
it's 100-year.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
and
it's
then
just
the
a
li-
lower probability thing.
And then the light blue is 50 years. I don't know.
No, that's
That's
floodway.
still floodway. And then the dark blue is actually the creek.
Right.
As
Well, I got that.
Yeah. So the creek here has been moved significantly, several hundred feet, and it's also been ditched. It's been squished in. And so it is a very fast moving, there's some pictures in there. It's really quite a dangerous place to be at high water. You would not want your kids in there.
Yeah, that creek.
It is caving in, it's digging down. And so our engineers, JVA, and their cohort are looking at how we can improve the floodway so that it has more flood capacity in a nicer channel. It would be a sort of a Department of Agriculture, NRCS kind of an approach for a nested channel is what it would be. But part of it here is that we're seeing FEMA mapping based upon very old topography that was before the owners did this other work here. And so that is all getting sorted out with the idea of being able to have a better defined floodway that doesn't go so wide. That's the idea. And so we think that we'll get a better result out of that. There's still some work to be done there.
But yeah, they have to work with FEMA in terms of the permitting for the bridge design, since it does fall in that area.
Did we know all this when they bought the property? Sounds like it's going to be expensive to remediate it.
We actually, Michael and I talked about it. I looked in my notes. It was February of the year before. And we knew there had been wetland work and we knew that there was permitting. And so our assessment was that it'll be complicated, but it's doable. And for really a golden opportunity for the town, it was certainly not what I called a red flag. And certainly something we could deal with. There's a good sense that we can make the creek much nicer, kid-friendly. Right now, I don't think fish could hardly even go up through there towards the forest. They could certainly wash down. And so we could make something, and we've talked briefly with Parks and Wildlife about making the fish more, the channel more fish-friendly, more kid-friendly. Allow fish to actually pass back and forth. There really should be connectivity between the Fraser River, sorry, I'm backwards here, the Fraser River and the National Forest. That would be really an ideal thing. Plus there's fly fishing properties upstream and things like that. So there's a good sense that we can make it much nicer than it is right now.
But we've had this was part of the discussions when we had the interviews and the open houses with developers who were interested in this project. And it was a concern by some developers, and I think it may have discouraged a few from actually applying for this project, but we still had over 12 responses. And they knew fully well during the Q&A sessions that we had that this was going, it's going to be work, but it's doable work. And you have a conservation, this protected natural area that you have to work with to build this bridge through. So it's just working through it.
And it's also part of the reason we gave them the 55-foot height variance, is because there was more ground that isn't as easy to build on or can't be built on, so we moved all the density to one side.
Yeah.
Well, what's the difference between a PNA and a conservation easement? Or is it a specific type of conservation?
So in the legal documents, it's called a protected natural area, and it says it shall be, there shall be signage that says protected natural area. But the surveyors have been using the term conservation easement, which is actually, I don't know if it's not correct. It's they're really deed restrictions. We're getting beyond my understanding of real estate here, frankly. Let's see, I'll add a couple of things. One of them is Sarah has emphasized all the way along that we try to maneuver amongst the core and the permits, that we do not trigger a required mitigation. Because if it's required, then you're fully responsible for paying it. If it is a voluntary thing, we want to do this because we want to see fish go up and down, and I want my kids down there collecting bugs, then that is something we can look for grants for. Right. And considering the fact that we just think it'd be a prime place for some interesting grants from the state and also some other sources.
And there's room for meanders in there and all those woods.
There's a lot of room.
Do some nice
Yeah.
meandering.
Yeah.
And
we've identified a place up by the St. Louis Creek campground that is, it's not very far away, same flows, about the same gradient, and there's some pictures in there, and it has much more floodplain and much more sinuosity to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is, one of the requirements is that we say, this is what we want it to look like. We measure the two and then we shape things to fit that. So that's a natural process there. One of the things, if I could bring it back to the land trust part of things here, is when we first looked at it, when Michael and I first looked at it, there's this laundry list of things, and you'd look and you say, well, they pretty much included everything in there that are prohibited. When we talked to Ben at the Corps of Engineers, he said, you can go ahead and let's look at this closer, but we need to follow the 2008 mitigation guidelines. And when you go to those regulations there, so those are federal guidelines on mitigation under the Clean Water Act, it's pretty, you can see where all of those requirements came from. So it's pretty clear what is now required is not that different from what will be required in the future. And so anything that would be handled by the land trust as well as the town or another entity, it's a very clearly defined series of regulations and requirements. We don't have to go grab things and invent things, that sort of stuff.
And what we're looking for now would be a resolution to move forward to apply to work with the Colorado Headwaters Land Trust, but their board would have to approve having us, so to speak.
Right. So in those documents, it looked like, was it the Army Corps wanted land to be in conservation easement for monitoring purposes? Or is that, did I read that incorrectly?
The language is more like there needs to be a real estate instrument to protect
Okay.
and so we don't have all the documents from the past owners, but it looks like the amount of basins that we dug out, and they have cattails in them right now. A lot of very, very nice habitat. They're about the same amount of habitat and that would have been filled. So it looks like it was a 1-to-1 ratio, which is very normal kind of thing.
Okay.
But then the rest of it is about a 10-to-1. And that's another normal thing for a protection. So you will restore, or you'll make some of this over here, and then you'll protect this larger amount here. So Ben is looking for us, Corps of Engineers, Ben, looking for us to bring him a nice package that fits, that frankly won't give him a lot of headaches. And I think I'm getting to your point here. So one of the real estate instruments is a conservation easement. It's specifically outlined in the federal regulation. And the Corps of Engineers prefers something like a conservation easement. It's very flexible. And it means that there will be a third party would be overseeing and making sure things stayed clean. If it were a conservation easement, if it did play out that direction, the town would still own the property. You'd still be responsible for the property. But if there was a bunch of trash or something happened, or the creek bank eroded and it was getting unstable, then the conservation group would alert the town, and then town staff would deal with these things. There's also a sense that there's going to be an awful lot of people, new people in that area, and there's always a few people that would like to be involved in, springtime cleanups and things like that, looking for bugs with kids and that kind of fun stuff as well. It's a great spot. In fact, the macroinvertebrate community is remarkable. There's hardly any fish at all. It's just like a sluice. It's like,
Yeah.
But the bug community is wonderful. Sorry.
That's okay. Jeremy, did you want to add anything?
No, good evening, everybody. I apologize, I'm not there in person. No, I think Jeff and Sarah gave a pretty good summary of what an easement would be. Jeff's last point there that it's not the land trusts, and most land trusts, we are not management organizations, we're monitoring organizations. And so any form of violation to the deed or update to the property itself would not be on the land trust shoulders. We could coordinate it, we might bring the people to the table, but our structure is to make sure everyone plays by the rules that they agreed to, in this case being a conservation easement.
Since a conservation easement is a possible solution at the end of this, and since this board has dealt with conservation easements a bit, we know that we can write in different uses for the space. And I noticed that it says low standard foot trails, no bikes. And is there a reason why we would want no bikes?
It's less impact. And in all honesty, the Corps was not super excited about the trail idea. There's going to be people there. We see it as a way to manage the flow of people and try to keep them in designated areas and be able to kind of, again, try to be good stewards, but still allow some access. But yeah, it would be because the bikes would be higher impact.
A good example is like Confluence Park. You ever been to Confluence Park off of Hideaway Park, or now it's called the Rendezvous Event Park or whatever? That little kind of wood area there, right on the creek. Kind of a good example of what types of amenities we could have here, where it is low impact, but there's like good educational signage, and you have kind of that nice leisurely kind of environment there.
But don't you think people are going to use those trails with their bikes?
Probably.
Maybe not.
Well, and the
Put a few
Fraser,
labels.
the river trail and the connection, Andy Miller's really been advocating for a connection that would run along County Road 8. I mean, this really would be a pretty small trail in along the creek, so I don't know that it would be well suited
More isolated.
or have reasons for people to really try to illegally
It
bring
would not
bikes
be
in.
a through course. It would be an out and back. There is no way to, well, it would be a much larger scale thing. Bridges, and you'd be adding a lot. So we went back and forth on this. At first there was a thought about, more trails and stuff, and then the Corps was definitely not into that. And then we realized people are going to be there anyway. So I think we'll be in the same position that the Park Service is in and the Forest Service, where they say you got to manage it some way. And so you make the trail small and rough and have places you could go and sit. It's really pretty. It's really nice. Yeah.
So the Army Corps would like to have it under conservation easement for monitoring. sounds like. There are costs. It'll run us about 25,000. I asked Jeremy, he said that they have a $10,000, it's just the upfront one-time cost, $10,000 project fee, and then a minimum of 15,500 for monitoring. So I don't know if we could find the budgeted funds, but we'll be looking at probably 25,500 to $27,000 contract with them. But they do good work.
If I can clarify something, Katie, there.
Thank you.
Yes. Is that those are the costs that come to us. The full cost of a conservation easement up front, and the language that we use is due diligence, but you might also find transaction costs tend to go actually around 65 to 70. I don't know the full scope of what the Army Corps would be looking for in terms of due diligence. A standard conservation easement, whether, on private property somewhere else in the county, that, $65-ish thousand includes an appraisal, conservation easement appraisal, which is unique compared to a real estate appraisal, a baseline report, which is, a lot of the work that Jeff does plays into baseline reporting, where it's the ecological baseline for the property that we monitor from then on out. Surveys, title commitments, everything else that you might find in another real estate transaction. And so including the fees that come to the land trust, the project fee, of course, pays for my time and time for staff. The stewardship fee is required of us by our Land Trust Alliance accreditation, where that every landowner, every easement in the country, I hope, pays into what's called a stewardship fund at their land trust, that one-time fee. And then that fund, the stewardship fund, is then used to pay for the annual monitoring, as well as any form of defense of the easement that might come. So if we have to go to court or if we have to work on restoring part of the property, that's what that funding is. Although I say this to every landowner, it's not just the town, don't balk at the cost. There are grants out there. Thankfully, the voters of Grand County renewed the Open Lands, Rivers, and Trails Fund this last election cycle. That is a grant that I go to first to help pay for transaction costs and due diligence, but there are others. And so if that is a primary concern, there are certainly grants and other ways that we can work on that. However, as I started with, I don't know exactly what the Army Corps would be looking for, since this is a relatively unique project. But keep that in mind, and it is not just the 25,000.
Thank you.
Let me, so when you all bought the land, you bought this too. So right now you're responsible for it. And so the beauty and why the Corps of Engineers likes groups like the Headwaters Land Trust is this is what they do. They're geared up for it. And as Jeremy said, if they need to defend it, then there will actually be attorneys. What are you guys doing? And so that's why this is a preferred route to go. But you're responsible for monitoring that project area. If something's not completely copacetic with the permit, you're required to fix it. Well, anyway, there it is. So either way, it's got to get done.
And I'll just add, at our consultations with the Army Corps, they very much have not given us a strict, this is what you need to do, this is what we allow, this is what we will not allow. He talked a lot about debits and credits, and so we are trying to present them a package that shows that we are looking to conserve this as it was agreed to be conserved back in 2012, and just a strong enough package that they will approve amending that conservation easement. We see the Colorado Headwaters Land Trust as potentially a piece of that package, knowing that they will be good stewards and conserve it as it's meant to be conserved, but also serving that dual purpose for us, that it allows us to move forward with the road and the bridge and the housing project. So just kind of setting us up for our best chance at success with that process.
So the hooks are Right now, the preserved natural area does not allow a bridge over the creek. The answer is no. Okay, so we see, and both, it was actually Jeremy that originally suggested it. And the Corps, they don't want a bridge through that area. So if we could adjust the area into better, and we go out into the 30-foot open water setback, for instance, and things like that, then we would allow the bridge to be able to go through. The bridge needs a Corps of Engineers permit as well. So the Corps is sitting on with a number of hooks here. And they're looking for an attractive package that's not going to cause them a lot of headaches.
So
And I will just
that
say
readjusted boundary
Mm-hmm.
still gives them an additional 0.2 acres
It's
over
on
what
the
it would
order
have been if they'd
to-
stretched it out.
a little bit.
So it cuts off the stem here, and then Jeff has drawn it so it goes along the 30-foot setback that's required anyway from the creek, so we can't build within that anyways. And it helps actually keep the creek within the protected area. 'Cause I don't know if you notice up here, as Jeff has pointed out to me, this dotted yellow line is now kind of in the middle of the creek. So the creek has shifted. So it keeps the creek entirely. But I will say this proposed area could change some. JVA is working with it with the MAD developers to make sure everything kind of fits their developments, but more or less, we believe it should look like that green line.
So those of us that have walked down this wetland permitting path, Parnell and I some years back there, know that one puts 1 foot in front of the next and moves along. And to my reading, the resolution says, let's start going down this path with the land trust. Based on their insights. And we'll say it again, they need to discuss this and see how this would play out for them themselves.
And this back plan, so that phase one, which is 3 of the large buildings on the southern part of the parcel, that this bridge and this road will be complete by the end of phase 1's construction, which is, you'll get the update at the next board meeting is basically December 2025, phase 1. So having this arterial is going to be a huge advantage for that higher density of people that are going to be on that.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2024-01-02.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thanks, Sarah.
So can I ask?
Thank you.
Sarah a quick question before she's done with
Jeremy, thank you.
Sarah?
Yes.
I was gonna just, because this is not the conservation easement, but the replat of the property, how does that tie into what we're doing now with the development?
So
Yeah.
the project is we're going through a replanning process right now.
Okay.
That'll be at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the calendar.
All right.
Thank you.
But before I go, if I may, I do welcome all town board members to contact the land trust, contact me or any of my board members. And I know that you know a few of my board members intimately who are in the room. But with any questions or concerns, we are a resource. And until we get the application, we're here for that conversation.
Great, thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. See you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Spoken.
Thank you, Joe.
Joe's got to go.
Okay. Sorry, Jeremy. You're still on there. We are now at Meadows of Grand Park plat extension request. So it's my understanding that the resolution and the staff briefing did not make it into the packet. And you handed those out? Did you hand those out?
Yeah.
So you have those. I don't know if you guys want to move forward.
I wanna-
Do you want to?
I have one thing I want to ask about it. So that would put it into 2029, whenever. Is it 2028? Isn't that when the PDD expires for Grand Park?
Correct.
So we shouldn't make anything, approve anything that extends beyond that date, should we? Because there will be negotiations at that time. So that's my only concern. I just feel like we shouldn't say, okay, you can have 5 years, that we should make it
Well, this,
tie it into that date.
that's a little different. My guess is how these built out this next year, next 2 years.
Yeah, well,
Because
then
let's
that'd
approve it for
great
2 years.
Because
I mean,
it's
everything's in there.
perfect.
The road's in there, the water, the sewer line,
Yeah.
everything's down there.
No, it's a great project, but it's just the idea. I don't think we should set a precedent, and it leaves it just is cleaner. I think it's much cleaner if we just say, we don't make any approvals for anything in Grand Park that would do an extension beyond that date in 2028, but I don't know what that date
Okay.
is.
Yeah, when does
So
the
back
PDD?
to my original question, or is the board okay moving forward with this discussion item without having the information prior to tonight? Is my question, because the resolution and the staff briefing was not included in the packet. So that's my question. If you guys are okay with it, it's fine.
I'd rather not.
Can we table it to the next meeting?
We very well could.
Okay.
And can we find it? What is the date of the PDD expiration? Do we know that?
Yeah. And personally, I would like to see that. You can talk with the applicant, but to see if they could just use that date.
So one thing that I have talked to Kent about with, the vested rights expiring, the zoning expiring in 2028. As we're presented with plats for parcels to be developed, we don't have any justified reason to not approve a plat while he is within his full rights of platting things right now. There's no legal stance where we can do that. I can have Kent confirm that with you if you would like. But because he currently has the ability to plat land through our annexation agreement, he has every right to plat those parcels.
Okay.
And all this, this was approved back in 2019 and obviously expired. And this is just looking at reapproving what was platted, and my discussions with Clark about this were, it's really about talking about market demand and product types that was more digestible to market.
I totally understand why they're not, they want to have an extension.
So how is, can we go back to my question? Let's deal with that before anybody else.
I'm fine with that.
Eileen has said no. Katie has said no.
I'd like to read it more thoroughly.
Louis,
I think we should table it to the next meeting. There's no
three.
urgency to it,
I'll
right?
table it.
there's 4.
Is there urgency to it for the developer?
Nope.
I mean,
No.
So
might as
somebody,
well read
if
it
somebody
here,
would
right?
make a motion to table,
I move to table this to the next meeting.
is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Paul.
I had a question on the plats, Michael. Once a plat's recorded and approved, why would it need an extension? Like Victoria Village, for example, that plat was done back in 1980. There's been no extensions on it. Now we have to replat it.
Michael will find out and
I will find
bring
out.
that back
All
to
right.
the next.
Great.
It's coming.
I'm just trying to figure out when.
Okay, ordinance, now we are at, there's a typo on the published agenda. It should be ordinance 508 instead of 506. Ordinance 508 is adding Article 4, Chapter 10, eradication of graffiti vandalism, and Michael's going to handle this, but just the next one is also inaccurate. It should be 509 instead of 507, just to get that out of the way right now.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is in reference to some obvious experiences of graffiti that we've seen in Fraser last year. And also just kind of provisions for things that have been experienced on different buildings throughout the Fraser Valley, and allows staff to work with the property owner to alleviate any potential crude graffiti that doesn't look good for the town. What this does is it identifies graffiti. It defines graffiti. It defines it as defacing the property, and defacing is defined as means to mar the external appearance or injure and impair or destroy by effacing significant details of something, by removing, distorting, adding to, or covering all or part thereof. So what this does is it declares graffiti as a nuisance. But it's also, it allows for the property owner to let the town know, like, hey, I've got some graffiti on my property. And we're typically talking about a half bucket of paint, if less. So what this is if the property either notifies the town within 72 hours of noticing the graffiti, or that the town notices the graffiti, we can notify the property owner, who, may or may not be here in the area, and just see if we can, hey, can we have the ability to agree that we can remove or cover up this graffiti until you figure out a more permanent solution. So if that happens, it allows the town staff to go on and paint or remove the graffiti that's in question at the town's expense, which would be a very low cost, and
Maybe.
that's simple to do. The one change that I've talked to with Chief Trainer's input and with Kent, our attorney, is to if the owner of the property refuses to allow the town to come on and cover up the graffiti, or if the property owner does not remove the graffiti themselves, we have the ability to serve them a violation letter that they're in violation of our code, of our nuisance code, and we are able to impose fines. And the recommendation is to move the general penalty was just changed a few months ago from $2,650 to $1,000 per occurrence. So it would change the $2,650 to $1,000 per occurrence, and that occurrence for the nuisance code is every 48 hours.
So the fee is actually less. It's a 26,000. There is the potential misdemeanor. I don't have internet right now for some reason.
Right. Okay.
Um,
Any owner, occupant, or agent in charge of a lot, building, fence, structure, premise, or place who fails or refuses to abate the nuisance within 24 hours after being ordered to do so by the Board of Health, Chief of Police, or other officer of the town shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction, in addition to all legal remedies available to the enforcement of this chapter, such as injunctions and mandatory restraining orders and any other available relief, shall be punishable by a fine not exceeding what I would propose as $1,000 per occurrence, which is every 48 hours.
Makes sense. The
Right.
thing that makes me nervous is if it's on somebody's property and somebody else put it there and we consider it graffiti, but they want it to stay, are we infringing on their freedom of speech by telling them what they can have on their building and what they can't?
Yeah, and another battle with the ACLU.
Right.
Well,
Yeah, I
and-
guess we just
and
feel that
here
when
you're-
the time comes.
And
That wasn't
my
a
issue with,
battle.
and my
Yeah,
issue
what?
with this is, and I talked to Mike about this a little bit earlier. My issue is you're punishing the victim. You have graffiti on your house from somebody else. You don't report it. You don't care about it. You get $1,000 fine. So if we add this, I'd like at a later meeting to add a penalty for if you're caught putting graffiti on somebody's building, it's a $10,000 fine and $5,000 goes to the person that turned you in. So if you go and do something, people have a real reason to come and I get $5,000 if I find out you did the graffiti.
Ever read that book, 1984?
Yes, I have.
So graffiti is obviously a horrible thing that happens to any property owner. It's not just, the property owner from this last year that had it. We've seen graffiti in various other places in town. It's a terrible thing to happen. It's a very frustrating thing to happen to a property owner. And, and it's, we don't want to have to enforce an ordinance like this, but I think it's a thing to have in place just in case the property owner if there is something that is, being declared as a public nuisance, for example, off of Highway 40, and the property owner is not showing any intent to take down or abate that nuisance, this allows the town to, hey, can we help you with this? One, And then two, if you want to allow us to help you and you want to abate the nuisance yourself, we're gonna, you know, we're gonna press charges on this and encourage you to abate the nuisance.
And I agree with that. I want the nuisance removed, but punishing the victim of a crime seems the opposite of what we
But
should be doing.
I would imagine if the conversation, if it's the town or chief or whoever is, they call you up and they say somebody put graffiti on your building. If you say, no, I did that, or I know who did that and I want to leave it there, then I think it's a different conversation.
Right, then it becomes
It's
a different
not
conversation.
graffiti at that point.
But, you know, in graffiti's even stickers, putting stickers on buildings. You know, stay in Denver next weekend, right? The FUCL stickers that are being plastered everywhere. That's graffiti. And that needs to stop. I mean, our town spends how much time every week pulling stickers off of the light poles in town?
So are there fines already in place for people doing stuff like that? Graffiti and stickers?
Yeah, we have a damaging property ordinance.
Okay.
If they damage property up to $2,000, you know, they can be summoned into court, and that's something we do on a regular basis. Not necessarily for graffiti, but you know, virtually every Front Range municipality or county has an ordinance very similar to this in place already, and it has proven a tremendous benefit because when the graffiti is removed immediately, it tends not to show back up.
Right.
Where you have the problems is when it's there and it stays there, and then the next thing you know, somebody else is going, well, I want to add my touch to it, and so it just creates an out of control problem. But when you require removal of it immediately, number one, the residents and the businesses have been very much in favor of this because it allows them to keep their place looking nice.
Right.
And the second part about that is that if we find who's doing these things, they're going to be charged into the appropriate court and held accountable for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
So again, just the one change is just the fine to make that alignment. That the 2650 is what the previous general penalty used to be. So it was just lower that to $1,000, for instance.
So
And
now, are we talking right now about ordinance 507 that's labeled 506?
508.
506 is what the one I've been discussing, but I mean 507 is really just it's adding graffiti as a public nuisance in our code. That's all that.
But are you
is.
referring to
Well,
what
I'm
the
just
actual
confused.
number is?
I'm just confused because Philip was saying there's a typo. Is it still a typo on the thing that's in our hands here?
I don't know what you have in.
This agenda, the written agenda that you have.
It should be
from-
ordinance 508, and then the second one should be 509.
What about Clark signs?
So these say 506 and 507.
So those are inaccurate. It's 508 and 509.
Is that right, Antoinette? Okay. 508.
So on this agenda,
So
I'm gonna
506
change 506 to 508,
Correct.
and I'm gonna change 507 to 509. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, because we have those signs that Clark's replaced 3 times on this property. People keep throwing paint on them. He puts a new one on, they throw more paint on it.
Yeah.
Nobody can seem to figure out who's doing that,
Yeah, and I'm working with him on that.
right? And if you went to try to wash it off, you can't wash it off. Doesn't peel off, you have to replace the sign. Those signs
Right.
are probably $2,500 a piece. If the town has to pay for every sign to be replaced, that's gonna get real expensive real quick.
We're not going to replace.
No, right,
signs.
you just wanna cover it up, but that's what I'm saying. So the victim gets punished with somebody threw graffiti on your building or your sign. We're gonna cover it up, so you need to come replace your sign, and if you don't, we're charging you $1,000. It seems, and I agree with the chief. I've read the statistics. I agree with Chief Trainer. I think it's a good policy to get it removed or protected as quickly as possible or hidden, right? But I think that if we're gonna put this ordinance in, we need to be much more harsher on the people that are doing the vandalism. We need to be more active on finding out who they are, because it's the same 3 or 4 people doing it.
I mean, Chief, that's something we could potentially do is look at graffiti, which is
I mean, we
obviously
can find out who's printing the stickers.
I have
Start
I
there.
have a picture of the guy Put the sticker on the light poles.
There you go.
I have his picture. I sent it to Michael.
Yeah.
Michael sent it.
And I'll, we talked earlier and I'll talk to Ken about, what'll be a good way to enforce those scenarios.
Yeah.
But things like the billboard, there are sign code already provisions for that.
Yeah.
So I'm working with Clark. I've already talked to him about the signs and how we get those fixed.
Yeah, because I mean, those aren't community members. People are destroying other people's property. I don't want you in our community. You can go
Well,
somewhere else.
in an ideal world, we wouldn't have to impose any type of fine if the property
Right.
owner would actually abate the nuisance.
Well, how about if the people putting the graffiti on wouldn't do that? Then we wouldn't have to have an issue. Right.
But they're harder to catch. We know the property owners are.
Yeah. We know the victim's rape too, but we don't.
I would like
go
to
after
make a
them.
motion to approve ordinance 508, adding Article 4, Chapter 10, eradication of graffiti vandalism, with the change down to $1,000 from $2,650.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Thank you. Now, ordinance 509.
Well, let's talk about it a little bit. What's the difference?
So 509 is just declaring graffiti as a public nuisance.
Okay.
That's really it.
Oh, I had a question. Can unfinished buildings be counted as a public nuisance?
Yes. Yeah, I was gonna ask that. Too, there's a lot in here that is not currently enforced. I think. It seems like those yellow buildings are a public nuisance.
Yeah.
So they could be considered. Okay.
I mean,
I
I
have a-
don't
I
know
have a
which,
plan for that.
which line item it would be under. Is it spelled out anywhere?
It's actually defined in state statutes, not in our current nuisance code.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 509, amending Chapter 7, Article 2, graffiti vandalism nuisance.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
I,
Opposed? Okay. Well. Just resolution 2024-0106, accepting the resignation of the mayor and filing the vacancy. So my family has decided to move out of state. So I will no longer be able to serve as the mayor of Fraser. So my main residency will be in Florida, and I'm leaving in less than 2 weeks. So it's unfortunate I didn't get to finish my term, but it's the way it works. It's been a pleasure serving as the mayor most of the time. And I've looked forward to, checking in on Fraser in the future to see, where it's going and how it's doing, and kind of the stuff that this board and the previous board, the previous board and the previous board that I and Eileen, Katie have served on, all those boards, all those boards that have changed, and it's exciting to see what's happening for Fraser and moving forward. So I'm done.
You'll enter the 3 minutes though when you come to talk.
Yeah,
about
I
it.
can't even close the meeting.
Can't bank your time.
we haven't accepted it.
Motion to accept resolution 2024-0106, accepting the resignation of the mayor.
Is there can I?
Well, is that,
Still in charge.
You haven't been dismissed yet.
You guys say, is there a
Is
second?
there a second?
but are we in that resolution? We're accepting the process of replacing you.
So we can,
Yeah.
Discuss that.
so before we kind of dive into this,
Is there any further discussion?
Yes.
hold on a second. I think there were some words that were wished to be said.
No, yeah.
I don't know where we're at. Did somebody make a motion?
Well,
Or no?
do I just get to say, should this time for me to say, thank you, Philip? And it's been an honor to serve with you for all these years. I think was it 2006 that we first started on the planning commission
Planning commission.
together? A long time ago. So we've served through a lot of boards and seen a lot of changes, and seen some really good changes and some that people don't think are such good changes. And so real highs and lows, but I think that you've been great to work with. I think you've set a good example. You've been good about being consistent at our meetings and helping us keep them timely. Supporting the civility code back in the beginning. And Fraser has always been your number one priority lead. No matter what it is, it's like, if it's got to be good for Fraser. So you've, I think you've done a great job for us. And then there's your husband, Eric, and the Public Arts Committee and starting our public arts program and all of that. That's fabulous. You guys have been a real benefit for the town of Fraser and the valley.
Thank you.
So I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Katie took most of my words. So thanks for keeping Fraser and keeping your campaign promise. And then for your family's involvement in bringing the arts to Fraser. I could go on and on and on. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your time.
I wanted to share my appreciation to Philip for his time on the board and as mayor. Philip was mayor as I was considering running for a seat on this board. He took the time out of his busy schedule to meet with me to discuss what the position entails. His best piece of advice for me to consider was that I needed to be okay with people hating me. After getting on the board, Philip became my go-to person for advice and perspective as we cycled through 4 different town managers in less than 4 years. Philip's historical perspective has always been hugely valuable to me as I made decisions on various town topics. I was always pleased with how Philip ran town board meetings as well, doing his best to abide by the adage, no good decisions are made after 9 p.m. I felt that Philip was fair in allowing equal time for public comments and adequate time for board discussions, and has set an excellent precedent for the mayor that will follow him. In the last year, we've seen an increase in Philip's Hawaiian shirt collection, so the writing was on the wall that we wouldn't have him in the icebox of the nation very much longer. At that point, I started attending the weekly mayor's hours on Tuesdays, which gave me more time with him than ever before. I took advantage of this time to not only learn more from him as a long-term mayor, but to get to know you better as a person. I've truly cherished that time. I wish all the best for you, Eric, Jacob, as you embark on this new, warmer chapter of your lives.
Thanks. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate that. You guys would make me cry. Thanks.
Thanks for supporting me to step up into this role as well. I appreciated that.
Okay, so enough of that. So we have a
Second.
made a motion.
Eileen's question about, are we approving the process? for-
Yeah, that's part of the
Mhm.
resolution and I don't agree with it. So.
So this is just a proposed resolution.
Mhm.
We wanted to have something for you. If you desire to use this resolution, you can. If you don't want to, that's totally fine. We wanted to give you something that you could use as a tool that is optional for you to use. So a few different ways you can go about that. And tonight you want to kind of walk through that a little bit.
So now that Philip has resigned and the board will accept his resignation via this resolution or an amended resolution, the board now has to decide how to fill the vacancy of the mayor. So really, you know, the board has the authority to appoint somebody to fill the vacancy. Now that can be via a current trustee or a qualified elector that lives in the town of Fraser. It's really up to this board. You could fill the vacancy tonight if you wanted to via one of the current trustees, if you would come to a quorum on that. You could hold out and accept letters of interest from trustees and qualified electors and bring this back to the meeting, the next meeting in January, and decide amongst people that are interested in the position. And really it's the pleasure of the board of how you would like to proceed to fill that vacancy. If one of the trustees would be selected, the way it works is you would still remain a trustee. You don't become the mayor unless you're elected. So you're the acting mayor and the interim until the next election and the next mayor is elected. And that would mean you would still have 6 trustees on the board, and the trustee would act much like the mayor pro tem when the mayor pro tem steps in when the mayor is absent. So if it would be a trustee, you would run 6 trustees, you wouldn't fill a vacancy because there technically would not be a vacancy. Or if you go to a qualified elector, they also are the acting mayor. Nobody really becomes a mayor until they're elected by the citizens of Fraser. So it's really up to the board how you would like to move forward in filling the vacancy. Does anybody have any questions on that?
I have comments.
Okay.
Philip has fulfilled 97% of his term, and there's only 6 meetings left. I feel we should keep it as simple and carry on with 6. I like having an uneven number, but we don't have 4 to 3 votes very often, and I think we can make it through 6 meetings like that. To make it as easy as possible to concentrate on Victoria Village and other things and not getting someone up to speed, especially the mayor. We have 2 announced candidates on the board, and I feel giving either of them the position is an advantage, which we were warned of by staff. If we appointed one of them, we're giving them an advantage for the election. Unless we give each of them 3 meetings. So that leaves 4 of us. I don't need it. I could stay the mayor pro tem, and I don't know. Katie Souls has said she has time.
I won't be here
I think we
for
can do it.
part of it. I'm gonna be on the Grand Canyon.
For the whole time?
March
Yeah.
24th through April 15th.
Katie Fisher just raised her hand.
No, I didn't. I said that Eileen should. No. I said Eileen should do it. Just stay the mayor be the mayor pro tem, step in now, and wait until the elections are over. 6 more meetings only.
Yeah, Brian, I'll jump in and help you.
What do you think, Eileen?
I mean, I agree with Eileen. I don't think it should be anybody that's declared. I don't know who all has declared to run for mayor. I'm not going to. I'm glad to fill the position in the interim, but I don't think it's a good idea for people that are clearly going to run for mayor. I agree. I think it does give them an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
Well, it could go either way. You could be terrible for the 6 meetings and blow your chances, or you could be great. I just don't know. We've had this discussion.
I don't know.
We're with you guys.
Eileen, are you able to do it?
Well, and Lewis said he's just,
You're the pro tem though.
I think it makes sense. Vice mayor becomes mayor.
Up to you. You know the most about the history of the board, the history of Fraser. I think you'd be my first choice.
Or should we take letters of interest and make that decision next meeting? I mean, there may be somebody else that wants to do it too. I don't know.
other than the trustees? Is that
Yeah.
what-
So your point about having 6, it'd only be 7 unless if we
Fix them.
appointed somebody out,
Right.
outside of the
Yeah.
trustees, right? So it's going to be 6. More than likely be 6.
The only hard part of pulling somebody in that hasn't been sitting here for the last year or 2 is we've got a lot of big decisions coming between now and April.
I would just discourage that mainly.
Yeah, no, I would too.
Yeah.
So I'd just say we pick between the 4 of you.
Well, Katie says she'll be gone half the time.
Yeah, I'll be gone
From
for
where?
at least for March 20,
I mean,
I
Lewis
leave
would
March
good.
24th.
If Lewis wants to
And then
step up,
I'm back.
I feel like Eileen knows more about the history though, but I'm fine with whoever wants to do it. I don't have the time.
I'm glad to do it.
So
I
I
wonder
would
why-
How
ask,
are you on time?
I would ask that you
I'm a little
follow
short.
the mayor's lead though on keeping things clear and concise and sticking with time.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Because-
I appreciate the mayor has made some changes. I think they've been helpful. The sort of the Roberts rules. I think that's been a nice change. And then moving open forum up towards the beginning, I think that was a nice change.
Mhm.
I would like to put more structure around the agenda, like putting not time limits, but sort of an expectation of how long something's going to take. So we're not here until, midnight. Let somebody just ramble on for, 45 minutes and take up a lot of the time. I mean, there's some things I think I would recommend doing just to kind of create a little bit more structure, but I would be open to, anybody's input in terms of what you think, should be modified or changed, or maybe it's fine exactly the way it is.
And you have the time? Feel like you have the time to,
You're not gonna be
because there's
gone.
extra stuff you have to do. You gotta help set the agenda. Talk with Michael, Paul, Sarah, Antoinette.
It's only 3 months, right?
Yeah.
JFOC, mayors, managers, commissioners meetings. There's some larger meetings.
Mayor hours
Mayor hours, which
every
can,
Tuesday.
which can
at
change to
11.
whatever the availability is the best for
Should
whoever.
they share the position
Yeah.
and just have a representative from the board at the meeting? So
And do we have to have mayor's hours if we don't have a mayor? We have an interim mayor. And if
Yeah,
somebody
man.
wants to come in and
Mayor
talk.
doesn't have to have
they
mayor's
could-
hours if they don't want to. They're the mayor.
That's something Philip put in place. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Which was,
I don't know. Eileen's been here forever. And no offense to you, Lewis, but she's been doing the pro tem for 7 years plus and been to a lot of these same meetings that Philip goes to. So I don't know. I feel like Eileen's just a better person to be interim.
Give it, does she have the time? I'm asking
right,
her. if she
because
has the
she's,
time.
yeah, between
She's got a
work and
lot going
grandchildren.
on.
Yeah.
It's only 3 months.
And it is the 3 slower months of ranching and handling out.
Really,
I
five.
could, what? Is it 5
I think
meetings?
We'll end up typically canceling the first meeting in April because of the election.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Just the person will be opening the second meeting.
I already resigned, so I can't vote.
You haven't, we haven't.
We haven't gotten
accepted
the,
your-
we haven't got the second yet. You haven't done anything.
That's
Still
right.
in charge.
Okay, board.
So
do you
what?
wanna do?
Can
So
the
what-
board
no one-
call?
who's gonna do it?
All right.
Yeah, like what do we do? Do we call for a vote for interim mayor?
If
If we don't get a majority, I'm automatically in.
It's majority.
So who's for Lewis being the interim mayor? You can't vote for yourself.
Sure, you can.
Sure.
I know you can. All right. Three.
So it looks like Eileen's the
3 and 3.
3 and 3. You won.
Unless I,
But you can still vote.
Yeah, unless she says something.
No,
That's what I'm
because
saying.
you're not. up-
I'm voting for Eileen.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I mean,
Okay, 4-3, good.
I wanted Eileen for mayor pro tem when
Yeah.
Brian wanted it there.
I'd still vote for Ryan. I'm just, it's, as long as it fits your schedule.
I'll make it happen.
Okay,
There we go. Eileen,
Eileen it is.
I'm gonna let you borrow this for until you close the meeting.
Congratulations, Eileen.
We haven't seconded.
Yeah, we
Oh.
know.
Anyway.
Don't
This
say
is- I don't
additional
understand why
motion.
that had happened.
All right, so now, so just how does that change the resolution?
Oh,
So
thank you.
can I make a recommendation?
Resolution has to be
Absolutely.
modified.
It's after
You're gonna-
8.
Please do.
So I would say we scratch number 3 and say that Eileen Waldo will step in as mayor pro tem as acting mayor until the next election.
Thank you.
Yep. I'll restate my motion. Accepting Philip Vandenil's resignation, resolution 2024-0106, and having Eileen Waldo be the interim mayor until the election.
there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Now you are.
No, I'm done.
Thank you, Eileen.
Being available also.
We have Louis here.
Oh, we need to adjourn.
Oh.
Before you guys
I
leave.
move to adjourn.
Oh,
Wait, we have updates. Updates,
In and out.
updates. Anybody got an update?
Updates.
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 And just so you know, we are working on something for a gift for Philip. We did offer him the lion in the corner. He did.
Only, if you want to ship it to West Palm, then.
It would look great by your pool.
And put it back.
Oh, that would look great by your pool.
Danger, danger.
You think we won't ship it?
Oh,
I don't know if that would go well. It is.
I have an
Aw.
update, if we're on updates.
What is it?
I went to the Board of County Commissioners meeting on the 12th of December. Rick Ritter was there. He's the new region transportation commissioner. He talked about a few things. I'm gonna skip over it. The good things, let's see. CDOT did a US 40 speed study. Basically everything that was 65 will now be 60. So sorry for the folks that like to speed.
So what do you,
Like through Red Dirt Hill, through to Granby.
That's great.
It's not 80.
It's 60 now?
In the spring, they'll be putting it in when they can actually stick posts in the ground.
That's all gonna be 60 now.
It's all gonna be 60.
That's good to know.
Red Dirt Hill is gonna be coming through in 2 phases starting in 2025. I can't remember what round. I think phase 1, phase 1 will put 8-foot shoulders on each side of the road down Red Dirt Hill. Phase 2 will extend those shoulders to, what's that, east of the YMCA entrance, where it's real skinny right there. So I was excited about that one. Let's see. Region 1, which does the Clear Creek side of the pass, is actually going to go over Berthoud fully twice for each storm. So we'll have extra snow plows on Berthoud
Our
Pass.
creek side's gonna get better.
So
Wonderful.
How
our
could they
side-
get better?
Well,
Our
no,
side?
our side gets
Oh,
done
good.
as well.
I'm like,
as theirs.
So now one more time, repeat that for
So
me.
the Region 1 snowplows
Okay.
will continue to do their side, but at least twice per storm, they will do our side in addition to their side.
Wonderful.
That's great.
And when does that start?
It's going on now.
Yes.
The next time it snows, if it ever snows.
Wonderful.
Great. It's like,
And that's about it.
okay, and so it's gonna be 60 all the way like to Kremling? Like everywhere in this,
I don't know if it'll go as far as Kremling. I think the traffic study only went to Granby, if I remember correctly.
I'm guessing, or maybe past.
that's fine for Red Dirt, but
Once you get through the canyon.
Did they make Fraser 25 yet?
No, that was not included in the traffic study. I actually asked that question.
good job, Brian. Way to go.
Yeah, I don't know where it ended, but I'm kind of assuming Granby. That stretch. All right, that's it.
There's nothing between the fire station and Fraser Safeway.
No.
No
They're all
traffic.
55 now.
Yeah, I mean that section of 55 right there.
Tabernacle is 65.
But yeah,
Tabernacle was what?
Between Fraser and Tabernacle is 65.
Oh, yeah.
right. But that'll be 60.
Right?
65.
Mhm.
All right.
So, I don't know if you saw the emails about the CAS meeting. Seems, I don't know if anyone's thinking of going to that, but there's certainly quite a few people from Winter Park going.
Yeah.
Seems like that would be an interesting thing to go to.
And a lot of the about affordable housing programming and such, so.
Didn't they have the last one here?
No.
Oh, that's one was over in.
Oh, it's a long time ago.
Oh, was that a long time ago? that we had it?
When we went to Azteca.
See what 2020.
They do.
does for everything.
Yeah, it certainly does.
They do cast. I think they do cast meetings every quarter, don't they?
Where is it this
Yeah.
time?
It's quarterly, right?
Quarterly.
They have quarterly meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, this one they're really great to go to. I can't make this one, but definitely recommend anybody else go to it.
Where's this next one at?
Cresta Butte.
No,
Short drive from here.
yeah, 60.
And then also, at the CML policy meeting, there was mention of a bill that someone's bringing up for up to a 4% transfer fee. There's no bill number yet. I haven't seen. Probably in February that.
For real estate transfer?
For
Mhm.
statutory,
Yeah,
For statutory towns.
4%.
Up
Up
to
to, yeah.
Oh,
I
Winter
don't
Park
think
has
we
what,
would
a
ever-
1%?
1%, yeah.
Well,
But it's always
4%
been-
would be a lot.
For home rule only.
Yeah,
But it's been,
I can't see us doing 4%, but you know, 1% would be great.
I don't know if that, business tax goes through on nightly rentals, it might change the way we look at our housing up there. The changing, we're talking about taking a house, and if you use it Airbnb and you rent it for more than 90 days, you'd be taxed as a business at 27.8% instead of.
Commercial rate.
for property tax.
For property taxes, which could screw up a lot of things. If they're not thinking about this, the evaluation of a business is based on its profit, not based on what the building is. So a 29,000 square foot building that makes $0 has very little value. So it could really change the way we get taxes and how things work. So it could be really good and it could be really bad.
Okay. That's
Okay.
all I have.
I just had a couple, looks like, Paul and his team, has been doing a good job working with the Lions Ponds. You've probably seen a lot of heavy machinery over there the last couple months. The bathrooms are done, awaiting final building inspection. So they have water, sewer, power, it's heated, and a fully functional bathroom. So we will, I'll be sending out some information about this. We'll be scheduling a ribbon cutting, before the next meeting, at 5 p.m. is what I would propose. So we can do the ribbon cutting at the bathrooms at 5 p.m., come back here for dinner, and then have the regular board meeting at 6.
Perfect. That'd be fun.
Great. That works for everybody. That's the plan that we'll stick to.
So, and there's power there.
There's power.
So we be able to incorporate lights from there over to the gazebo for the event this year for our fire and ice. Because that was one of the big challenges last year is you couldn't really see, and to be able to have, get a deal on cheap Christmas lights and
Let's talk to Sarah about that.
yeah, something to consider.
Do they have
Yeah.
dark sky?
That could be a good
Well, they can just be twinkly lights.
No, it's a good idea. It's great.
Yeah.
Other thing I have is
Yeah, I would just say, I went by there today, they were locked, but one thing, I don't know if this is sort of by luck or what, but it's facing, the doors are facing south. So it melts the snow in front of the doors, which was great. I don't know if anybody planned it that
I
way,
bet they,
but the one side of the building that needs to be clear of snow and ice is,
it's dry.
facing south, which is great.
I think that was planned.
You'll take credit for it, right?
Yeah, especially somebody who has a north facing entryway to their house.
Yeah.
The other thing I had for you, you likely saw the invite for the candidate workshop to have some discussions with Eileen about how she wanted to do any type of a candidate workshop or open house. And based on Eileen's thoughts there, we're going to, as you saw on the email and an invite that is on our website and on Facebook, we'll be hosting open house at the Rocky Mountain Roastery, January 11th from 4:30 to 6. It'll be Eileen, Brian is volunteer. I'll see if there's one more trustee who may be interested in coming by.
I was gonna swing by, but
I'll swing by. I mean, I want to.
And you're like, yeah, that's fine. So
But
Parnell and Katie, you guys might swing by.
So you can't have all of us though, right?
I don't
Is
think
that-
I think it's kind of overwhelming to have all the
Right,
trustees there.
yeah.
So it's
Okay.
looking at having some good representation from the board. Myself, Paul, and Antoinette will also be there to help provide just some knowledge about the town's organization and operation, operational tempo, and just provide a good overview, keep it pretty informal. The last time we did a election workshop, it was here at Town Hall. Lewis, you had attended that remotely. It was so exciting that you clearly.
Yeah, oh,
remembered
that's
it.
right.
Uh,
Yeah, and I think, yeah, there was hardly anybody
It was the
participating.
PowerPoint presentation.
So is this
I was
a forum for people that are possibly interested in running
Right,
for the
that's
board?
the whole idea. To
Okay,
attract
it's
people.
not a
Debate.
It's
or
not
not
a-
a
No,
debate.
no,
That
yeah.
one wasn't a debate.
They're gonna have a debate
So-
though, right?
Can we,
Yeah.
can we make sure that we can advertise, the benefits of being on the board? Like, the medical insurance thing, I think that's a positive. Some people are interested in that. So we can hopefully attract some really qualified folks to run.
But we talked about the medical insurance though, and it was, I mean, they could tie into our towns, what's eligible for our
But that's
staff.
new.
But
That's
it's
new.
expensive.
It's not cheaper than the market, really.
They were gonna look
Is it-
at those rates.
So
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
same as the
It's,
open
it's,
enrollment.
it's
isn't it?
government rates for government entities.
Yeah.
It's very normal pricing there.
But, there's,
And the radio station,
What's the other
are they gonna
benefit?
be able to just have them put in a couple plugs for it?
No, absolutely. It'll be advertised to the radio station.
Yeah.
as well.
Kids to stay home alone.
Because this will be more casual.
Yeah.
Talk to people.
Right, and, a discussion with Eileen is that it might attract people to something as casual as grab some coffee or something versus coming into the more formal setting.
Right.
And it's good.
I think it's a great idea.
Great, well, I'll send you guys some more information about that. It's just really just,
That's the 11th, right?
You got to hate.
January 11th from 4:30 to 6 at the roastery.
No,
And I'll send you guys a calendar invite too, so you have it.
I had a hot dog.
Okay.
All right.
So, yeah, just to have it, to get it on the KFFR calendar.
Mhm.
Cause
Okay.
that's next week. And So
Right.
they do that this
Okay,
weekend.
you got it. That's all I have.
Okay. Motion
I
to,
mean, there's still gonna be a candidate forum in March, right? Or whenever.
this is nothing.
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Right.
KFFR has, as part of that MOU, did say they want to do that, the candidate forum. And we'll probably do that closer, probably beginning mid-March or so.
So would there be a separate one for the mayor's race and another one for trustees or?
I
I'm
was
not,
wondering about.
I'm not real sure.
Okay.
They did the forum last time and they formatted it and came up with all the questions. So I'll work with Steve and see how they want to do that. And I could see it being two different forums.
Yeah, the last one,
different
there wasn't a
seats.
mayor race.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of their questions were way left that last time. I don't know. It could be more
That
fair
helps,
this time.
that happens from public radio
It's
stations.
kind of a little bit left.
They're pretty leftist.
We could look at
And all the
maybe
questions were
screening some
based around that,
questions
which is
before the
whatever.
interview.
Yeah, we let
It's
them,
not really fair.
they didn't want us to come up with the questions. They wanted to do the questions.
Don't you
I
lean?
think the town should come up with the questions.
I lean right. Almost down the middle.
Maybe the citizens come up with the
Kinda
questions.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I just
I
figured
think
it wasn't like, it was just way,
I think that could be open for discussion. Where the questions come from.
Yeah. well, fine.
made it through
Anything else?
either way.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, I'm supposed to do
Right. Well, we didn't get you out by 8. I tried.
that. Not bad.